Hello students, today we are going to discuss the law relating to surrogacy in India. To start with the introduction. The practice of using a surrogate mother to carry a child was not only common in ancient times but also widely acknowledged and respected. Surrogacy or niyog is the practice where a woman whose husband is unable to father a child appoints another person, usually a rishi or a brother-in-law, to carry and deliver the child. As a result of unhealthy conception performed by a reluctant Vyas and the two reluctant widows, childless Ambika and Ambalika, they gave birth to blind Dhritarashtra and a sickly pale Pandu respectively. Kunti's pregnancies with Indra, Dharma and Vayu, which resulted in Arjun, Yudhishthir and Bhim, and Madri's pregnancies with the Ashwini twins, which resulted in Nakul and Sahadev, show that a niyog only produces healthy heirs if performed on a willing woman. The birth of Draupadi and her brother out of Yagnakunda is another surrogacy reference in the Mahabharata. Rishi Vyasa discovered that 101 cells could be cultured and brought to term outside of the womb. 100 of these went on to become male Kauravas, while one became Dushala, a girl. The practice of using a surrogate or having an embryo carried by another woman was not unheard of. In order to protect their seventh child, Balaram, from Devaki's brother Kamsa, Krishna's parents, Vasudeva and Devaki, transferred the embryo to Rohini, Vasudev's first wife. The traditional surrogacy agreement between Abraham, Sarah, and other 7 surrogate, Hagar, can be traced back all the way to the book of Genesis. Women who bore children for rulers and kings whose wives were sterile are a common theme in historical accounts. Noel Kinney, a lawyer, drafted the first legally binding surrogacy agreement in 1976. This was a conventional surrogacy arrangement, so the surrogate did not receive any financial compensation. Kinney never wavered in his support of surrogacy cause. Successful in vitro fertilization, IVF, embryo transfers had been reported prior to 1978, but on July 25, 1978, Louis Brown became the first baby born thanks to IVF. State surrogacy laws in the USA were largely indeterminate in 1980, making surrogacy contracts legal but unenforceable. Later, in the United States, Elizabeth Kane became the first surrogate to be compensated by law. The couple decided on a conventional surrogacy arrangement. The surrogate was to receive $11,500 as per the terms of the agreement. In 1985, a gestational surrogate successfully carried a child, not her biological child, on the behalf of the intended parents, allowing surrogates to avoid reconsidering their decision after giving birth. In 1986, the case of Baby M sparked widespread interest in gestational surrogacy, a relatively new approach to the surrogacy industry. In 1990, the court sided with the intended parents in custody, establishing that gestational surrogacy agreements were valid contracts as upheld by the courts. Now students, let us discuss the types of surrogacy agreements. An Indian perspective. In contrast to traditional surrogacy, commercial surrogacy is a contemporary practice. Due to the infertility of one or both partners and their desire to have a child, they have sought alternative childbearing methods. Assisted reproductive technology has made it possible for an unrelated surrogate mother to carry a child to the term. The term for this is gestational surrogacy. In traditional surrogacy, the mother who gestates the egg is the biological and the genetic mother of the child. Traditional surrogacy assumes a commercial dimension when a surrogate mother undergoes the implantation of a fertilized egg, which may possesses a complete genetic relatedness to the intended parents or solely to one of them, and subsequently carries the pregnancy to its entirety in return for financial compensation. The term wombs for rent emerged as a result of advancement in reproductive technologies, enabling the implantation of fertilized eggs and subsequent development into a viable fetus within any available uterus. This process occasionally involves the involvement of surrogate mothers from different nations. Legalization of the rent-a-womb or commercial surrogacy practice in India occurred in 2002. It was done in an effort to boost medical tourism in India. As a direct result of this decision, India was known as a hub of surrogacy. The lack of stringent regulations and relatively low cost of the production in comparison to its price in United States, which was approximately 1 lakh US dollars, are the two primary reasons for this. According to a report that was published in 2012 by CII, the annual size of India's surrogacy industry was 2 billion US dollars. In addition, it was estimated that over 3,000 fertility clinics spread across the country were participating in this activity. Concerns were raised regarding the unregulated nature of surrogacy business, which led to issues such as unethical business practices, the fact that commercial agencies and middlemen made the most profit as a result, the exploitation of surrogate mothers, the abandonment of children who were born as a result of surrogacy, and other illegal activities such as organ trade and embryo import. Because of this, legislation that regulates surrogacy in country went into effect recently. Before the year 2005, India did not have any regulations or oversight in place for assisted reproduction, surrogacy, the operations of infertility clinics, or any of these areas. Students, in 2005, the Indian Council of Medical Research (ICMR) and the National Academy of Medical Sciences (NAMS) published the National Guidelines for Accreditation, Supervision and Regulation of ART clinics in India. These are popularly known as ICMR guidelines. This was done to address the gap and to establish a system for keeping a track of ART clinics across the country. ART clinics provide assisted reproductive technology ART services. Later, in its 228th report, which was presented on 5th of August 2009, the Law Commission of India addressed the need for legislation to regulate assisted reproductive technology clinics as well as the rights and obligations of parties to a surrogacy, and recommended that commercial surrogacy be made illegal due to the absence of sufficient legal framework. It was discovered that individuals from other countries took advantage of India's relatively inexpensive surrogacy services, or the detriment of the country's economically disadvantaged and educationally deprived surrogate mothers. In light of the aforementioned information, the Ministry of Home Affairs of the Government of India issued a notification in 2015 that made it illegal for foreigners to engage in commercial surrogacy in India. The ART, that is Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Act of 2021, and Surrogacy Regulation Act of 2020. We need a special mention for elaborative discussion on the regulation of surrogacy. The first surrogacy regulation bill was introduced to Lok Sabha in 2016, but it was not successful in passing before the dissolution of Parliament. As a direct result of this, on July 15, 2019, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare presented the Surrogacy Regulation Bill 2019, also known as the Surrogacy Bill of 2019, to Lok Sabha. The Surrogacy Bill 2019 purported to establish legal protection for the rights of children who were born as a result of surrogacy, as well as to prevent the abuse of women involved in the surrogacy process. The Surrogacy Act imposed a great deal of additional regulation on the practice of surrogacy, including but not limited to the following restrictions. Under Section 11, it is mandatory for all surrogacy clinics to obtain a registration number from the state. Furthermore, surrogacy clinics would only be able to consent to cases of altruistic surrogacy in which surrogate mother does not receive any payment other than her share of surrogate's medical bills and insurance premiums, and they would not be able to consent to the cases of commercial surrogacy. Furthermore, surrogacy clinics would be prohibited from storing, selling, or importing human embryos or gametes under the proposed legislation. Surrogacy clinics would be permitted to handle and all abortion-related procedures if they received the appropriate consent from the patient and the government. For instance, the procedure can be carried out if both the surrogate mother and the relevant authority give their written consent. This is required for it to be legal. The stipulations indicate that the surrogate must possess a familial relationship with the prospective parents, be a married woman with prior experience of childbirth, fall within the age range of 25 to 35, limit her participation in the surrogacy to a single occurrence, obtain certification affirming her physical and psychological suitability, and fulfill all of these criteria. Next, the Surrogacy Act also lays out requirements for the intended parents, such as not having any living children, whether through birth, adoption, or surrogacy, and being between the ages of 23 and 50 for women and 26 and 55 for men. In addition, they must not have any previous experience with the surrogacy. Students, it is also important to note that in order to comply with Section 4 Subclause 3A of the Surrogacy Act, the intending parents will need to obtain a number of certificates and permissions from various entities, such as District Medical Board, Certificate of Essentiality, Certificate of Medical Indication, Certificate of Eligibility, etc., and the Court of the Magistrate, Order concerning parentage, etc. These are just a few of the requirements that must be met. Furthermore, for violating Section 38 of the Surrogacy Act, additional penalties include a fine of up to 10 million Indian rupees and 10 years in prison, depending on the severity of the offense. The following types of violations are detailed in the Act. Now let's have a look. First one is to take part in a commercial surrogacy operation or to launch one of its own. The act of promoting commercial surrogacy services by exploiting either the surrogate mother or child for personal benefit while disregarding the well-being of the other party involved, ignoring, mistreating, or rejecting a child who was born through the use of a surrogate. Third, bringing human gametes or embryos into the country or selling them there for the purpose of surrogacy, and employ a method of selecting sexual partners because these clinics have the potential to be used for commercial and profit-making purposes. A number of crimes have been established to prevent them from operating illegally in an effort to prevent them from being used for commercial and profit-making purposes. These include the selection of a particular gender for an embryo to develop into the abandonment or exploitation of children conceived through assisted reproductive technology, that is ART, the sale, purchase, trade or import of human embryos or gametes, and the transfer of a human embryo into a female or an animal. For the first offence, a fine that ranges from 5 lakh rupees to 10 lakh Indian rupees could be imposed. Now students, let us talk about the judicial overview over this issue. In the case of baby Manji Yamada versus Union of India and another 2008, biologically Manji was of Japanese descent. Dr. Yukai Yamada, biological father, and Dr. Ifumuki Yamada, biologically mother, are a Japanese couple. The gestational surrogate mother is the surrogate mother in this case. In 2007, this occurred during the couple's trip to India. Subsequently, the biological parents encountered marital discord, leading to the relocation of the biological mother to Japan prior to the child's birth. Additionally, the father had journeyed to Japan after the expiration of his visa. Initially, Manji received care from his parental grandmother at a clinic in Anand, where he was provided with the breast milk by an Indian individual. However, due to contracting an infection during the riots, he was subsequently relocated to an intensive care unit in Rajasthan. Manji's birth certificate included the names of his biological father, which was sufficient for Mrs. Yamada to adopt him, and this was held by the Supreme Court in India. In case of Suchita Srivastava versus Chandigarh administration 2009, the Supreme Court of India made the observation that a woman's right to make reproductive choices has been interpreted as a facet of personal liberty, in accordance with the meaning of Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Students, the personal intimacies of marriage, motherhood, procreation and childbearing must be included and protected by autonomy. In Devika Biswas versus Union of India 2016, the Supreme Court of India came to the conclusion that right to life in Article 21 includes an essential component known as right to reproduction. The ability to carry a child to term, give birth and care for one's offspring are all part of a woman's reproductive rights. There is also protection for one's right to privacy, dignity and integrity. As a result, the preceding judgments indicate that a woman's right to make a choice regarding her reproductive options fall under the purview of Article 21 of the Constitution. Because not all of a couple's close relatives are able to help them, because parents through the process of surrogacy, a general prohibition on commercial surrogacy can result in the denial of the right of parenthood. Students, in the case of B.K. Parthasarathi versus Government of Andhra Pradesh 1999, the court ruled that the interference of the state in one's ability to have a children constitutes a direct violation of right to privacy of that individual. Furthermore, the Aadhaar judgment provided further support for the position that privacy should be protected. Also, there is no mention of providing equal rights to people of the third gender in the Act. The grounds mentioned in the bill are extremely specific, which means that same-sex couples and transgender individuals are not eligible to commission a surrogacy arrangement. Therefore, in this transformative era of constitution, which is moving towards the ideals of liberty and equality, these constitutional loopholes would be constitutional hurdles. Students, in the pending case of Arun Muthuvel versus Union of India of 2022 and other connected matters, the central government has objected the inclusion of live-in couples and lesbians, gay, bisexual and transgender couples within the scope of Surrogacy Act, as according to the government, it would increase the potential for misuse of such facilities and make it difficult to ensure the best future for the child born through surrogacy. Students, the Union of India and the Indian Council of Medical Research submitted an additional affidavit wherein they referenced the findings of a parliamentary committee to justify the exclusion of living-in couples and gay couples from the Surrogacy Act of 2021 and the Assisted Reproductive Technologies Act of 2021. This affidavit discloses in its 129th report, the committee concluded that although the court has decriminalized relations between live-in couples and same-sex couples, they have not been legalized as yet. The court has decriminalized same-sex and cohabitational relationships. However, neither special provisions nor additional rights have been introduced regarding these couples. In its 102nd report, the committee stated the inclusion of these sections of society in Surrogacy Act would open the door to abuse of such facilities, and it would be difficult to ensure a better future for children born through surrogacy, unquote. The Union Government and ICMR filed this affidavit in response to a batch of petitions and interim applications challenging the constitutionality of various provisions of the Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Act of 2021. The Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Rules 2022, the Surrogacy Regulation Act 21 and the Surrogacy Regulation Rules 2021. Currently, a division bench of Supreme Court of India is hearing these cases. Coming to the conclusion of this discussion, the fertility of Indian women who are interested in surrogacy has become a global commodity, and delay in enacting the legislation to govern the surrogacy was the reason for this. However, this focus on profit as a means of rescuing the industry has not been successful in addressing a problem that requires more in-depth concern. It is more effective to implement effective regulations to prevent further exploitation and the emergence of illegal markets than it is so outright ban the activity. It is high time that we rouse ourselves from this slumber and put in place an alternative path that consists of stringent regulations and policies for enforcement. The government ought to enact laws that are consistent with fundamental rights as well as policies that are sympathetic to feminist ethos. Consideration must be given to the living conditions of surrogates as well as potential challenges they could face in order to provide justification for a complete ban. The altruistic model requires a surrogate mother to put up with the emotional and physical tolls of being a surrogate for no other reason than compassion, which is not a realistic motivation. The compensatory surrogacy model, in which losses are taken care of by the intended parents in terms of health, wages, suffering and death, among other things, should therefore be investigated. The practice of using a third party's body or embryos to carry a child is fraught with social, ethical, legal, and technological complications. The issue of surrogacy does not just have legal ramifications that need to be contemplated. Rather, society as a whole needs to investigate as a social problem and find a solution to it in such a way that our moral standards are not compromised, while at the same time making the most of the advances in the technology. While developing legislation of this kind, governments are obligated to give consideration to the various stakeholders involved. Students, it is necessary to take into account the individual experiences of surrogates in order to develop best practices in surrogacy, contracts that involve the fewest violations of ethical standards. Furthermore, states have a responsibility to recognize that being a surrogate mother is a legitimate profession for some women and that these women chose to participate in it voluntarily. There should be stringent regulations placed on both surrogacy agents, surrogacy clinics, in order to prevent any form of exploitation of surrogate mothers and intended parents. There is a prerequisite of law and policy to become more conducive to the needs of society and of the individuals that make up the society. I would like to end this lecture by quoting Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. I quote, "The Parliament ought to make the most of this opportunity in order to meet its responsibilities, fill the gaps and deficiencies in law, and plan a comprehensive way out that is free from loopholes and illegalities and which is capable of withstanding the scrutiny of the courts." With this, we come to an end of today's lecture. Have a nice day. Thank you for the patience listening.